Welcome to the Gallant Few Rangers podcast, who are proud to be sponsored by the Insurance Practice. The team at the Insurance Practice specialise in family protection and life insurance, and who better to look after you and your loved ones than fellow Rangers fans. Listeners of the Gallant Few will get a free protection review, so get in touch with the team at www.theinsurancepractice.co.uk or contact the Gallant Few for more information.
Hello and welcome to the Gallant Few podcast, the episode 1 of a new series called Where Are They Now? This is a series where we'll look back on the players who have featured for Rangers, starting off from the 2012-13 season through to 2016-17 season. We're going to look back at the players who formed an interesting part of Rangers history. We think enough time's passed by that we can look back on these players and see what did they do for Rangers and where are they now, as the title suggests. To join me on this episode, on the first episode, we've got Colin MacDuff. Hello, Colin.
Hi, Graeme. Thanks for inviting me on the first episode. Probably the most difficult one out of the four we'll do with the players that we're got to look at, but no, I'm looking forward to reliving some of the memories for 2012.
Yeah, and that the reason this one will be a difficult one, or one will be an odd one to do, is the way that the series will work. We're going to look at episode 1, and we're going to feature really just for season 2012-13. So there may be players that you think are part of that season but don't feature in this episode. That's because they will feature later on in the series. But let's kick off with season 2012-13, and like any team, we usually start with a goalkeeper. So let's look at the goalkeeper for that season. Goalkeeper was Neil Alexander, who before joining Rangers had played for, starting off his career at Stenhousemuir. Played at Livingston. I remember him having a good game, or a good career at Livingston as well. Before moving to Cardiff, where he spent most of his career, that's where he racked up the most appearances. Before moving to Ipswich Town, and then joining Rangers. Colin, what's your memories of Alexander at Rangers?
I think I have spoken on previous pods as well how much I admired Neil Alexander. I was delighted when we signed him in 2008. I'll be honest, at that point, I never thought he was going to be any more than a backup to Alan McGregor. I didn't think he'd feature very much at all. But he was one of these players who was always in and around the Scotland squad, and you kind of knew was a decent keeper. But how he ended up featuring in the cup run of the UEFA Cup final, when McGregor was, being a bit naughty on and off the field, he would always come in and do a great job. I think Rangers, like the last 30 odd years, we've got a list of absolute elite goalkeepers. You've got McGregor, Gorham, Kloss, Chris Woods before that. There is a level below that, and Alexander's kind of in there, maybe alongside the likes of Ronald Vateris, stuff like that. I thought he's such a underrated player for Rangers before 2012. I don't think people always give him the credit that he was due for the role he played in league winning sides, cup winning sides, and getting to the UEFA Cup final.
Yeah, he did have one of the things that sticks out to me is he was always in and around the Scotland team. Which was a difficult thing to do at the time when you had Craig Gordon, Alan McGregor. He was always played back up to McGregor anyway, but just that level below, but still a top class goalkeeper. Very professional. To have racked up the amount of appearances he has, he's not like a backup goalie. when you look at I think he's got over 500 appearances in club football, so that shows that he wasn't just one of these backup goalkeepers. If he went to a club, he wanted to be number one, and if he wasn't, he was going to make sure he was going to be, or else moved on. Yeah, so after he left Rangers, he joined Crystal Palace, but he didn't actually feature in any games. He just he went down there. It didn't quite work out for him, and he quickly moved on. And he moved on to Hearts, and in his time at Hearts, he led them to promotion. So he won the championship at Hearts, returning to the Premier League. And then he moved on to Aberdeen. Again, for whatever reason, it didn't work out at Aberdeen, and he was back up there. Didn't have any appearances, so this obviously is starting to tail off towards the end of his career. But he did finish up at Livingston, where he had previously played, and played there in 2017. Again, another promotion for him, so racking up more trophies before finally retiring. Well, that's Neil Alexander. Let's move on to the defence. Yeah, the defence for Rangers that season was probably at the heart of it would have been Carlos Bocanegra. Carlos was a player who had quite a career before he came to Rangers. He was an American international, had played in England, played in France, obviously started off in America. So his clubs before he came to Rangers were Chicago Fire, Fulham, where I think most of us remember him from, Rennes in France, St Etienne, before joining Rangers. Again, Colin, what's your thoughts on Carlos? Any particular memories at the time?
So for the season before, I remember him and his centre-half counterpart, who I'm sure we're going to come on to, were just fantastic for the first half of the season. Carlos Bocanegra in particular, he kind of filled that void that David Weir was leaving. David Weir was getting injured on and off. He was still there for the first half of the season, but Carlos Bocanegra is such a classy centre half, such a intelligent footballer, and I remember the absolute shock seeing him walk out for that first game in the Challenge Cup the season after, and he had the captain's armband. And with Neil Alexander in goals and Carlos Bocanegra and whoever else alongside him in defence, I kind of knew that we weren't going to keep all of them. But with the kind of centre halves and the goalkeeper, I thought, right, this is Rangers. I should have said at the start of the show, I went into this season with such youth and naivety. I thought this is, what's happened has happened. It's not going to change now. This is our chance to build a team for the future with the right guys about it. So I had this fairy tale that maybe Bocanegra and Alexander would stay there for 2 or 3 years, but alongside them, a young goalkeeper would come through for the cup games and a young centre-half would come through with Bocanegra and bleed them in. And I remember just the first game being absolutely delighted that Bocanegra was there, and I thought, well, he's not going to waste his time now, and he's already played the first game. He could have got a club easily, but I was wrong.
No, it wasn't to be, was it? Yeah, Bocanegra did just have a touch of class about him. He had international pedigree, so many games for America. I think he'd played at World Cups, he just a class act on the international stage. After leaving Rangers, he went to Spain for a bit. He went on loan to Santander, Racing Santander. Played a bit there before finally going back to America to play for Chivas, how would you say that? I'm going to go with Chivas. Chivas USA played for, so finished his career there. He's currently at Atalanta United. He's a technical director there, and he's actually, he was technical director, he's now technical director, and he's the vice president of the club. Seems to be doing a very good job there. He just, I don't know, that professionalism, that's the impression you got from him as a player. I think he's taken that into his post-football career, and yeah, as I say, he's doing good work over there. And then just recently, a few months ago, he was elected into the National Hall of Fame. He's actually retired there as the most international goals for USA as a defender.
Did he not reach over 100 caps for the USA as well?
Yeah,
I'm sure he did.
Yeah. As I say, so many goals for them. But yeah, I think 110 is definitely well over 100 that he managed to rack up.
That's an amazing achievement, isn't it? That's
because we're saying that about Davis now, aren't we? We're waxing lyrical about Stephen Davis and the amount of caps that he's racked up, but to have done that as well as spending the majority of your career in Europe and still, flying back to America to play in the North America Cup, is it the Gold Cup they call that over there? Playing the Gold Cup. Absolutely amazing career. And, yeah, rightly recognised and being honoured in the National Hall of Fame. On to the next defender then. Next defender I'm going to look at is Emilson Kribari. Emilson Kribari is a Brazilian player. Played for a few teams in Italy before coming to Rangers. Most of his career was spent in Italy. Before he came to Rangers, though, he was at Cruzeiro, and then he signed for Rangers. Colin, what was your impressions of Emilson Kribari? Did he leave a lasting impression on you?
So I think Emilson Kribari is a name that gets bandied about as a bit of a joke figure, and I think he's more a victim of the team he played in, because I think most people think about anybody, bar maybe the couple we're going to highlight, but no, there's a lot of maybe foreign defenders, if you like, who've came in during this stage in our history, and I think Kribari gets put in with the rest of them, and we just assumed I think he was actually okay for Rangers. I might get shot down for saying that, but in comparison to what we had and the job at hand, he'd done fairly well for Rangers, and I didn't know anything about him before he came, but when he did sign, like you seen, I'm sure he won the Coppa Italia with Lazio before, and he was always playing for, Empoli, Udinese, Lazio, decent clubs, not European, like competing clubs, but at the time he had a decent career, and I thought he managed to do a decent enough job without standing out, but I think we're maybe a bit unfair in him when we look back at this stage.
Yeah, but we had a few bad results, didn't we? So I think we just get the scars of that. And you're right, it's just that he's labelled and he's by association with those. I'm struggling to remember too many performances with him. I don't know, there was a few games and you're thinking back, and I'm struggling to think him standing out, or he just seemed to go under the radar for me. I don't remember anything in particular about what he done or how he stood out. After leaving Rangers, there was no future. There was no other clubs that he played for. Anything else, Colin, that you're thinking about when he played with Rangers? Any other performances?
I'll be honest, I remember thinking at the time, this was a sensible signing, and that's not a thing you say too often about Ali McCoist. It was a sensible signing because by this point we knew potentially Bocanegra and a couple of other big names were going to be moving on. So this was I think he was maybe 33 at the time of signing, an experienced centre half, or what should have been an experienced centre half. And again, I've still got this youthful dream that this is an experienced guy to get us through for a couple of seasons while bleeding the 18, 19, 20-year-old centre halves. So I remember being happy with the signing at the time, and I've not really got too much bad to say about Kribari.
Fair enough. What he did do after he left Rangers, though, is he went and founded a soccer academy. So he's the C25 Soccer Academy. It's based in Londrina, which is just about 300 miles from Sao Paulo. So it's a youth academy, teaches children how to play, all different age groups. That's where that man's ended up back home. I think that was actually his hometown, or that was the team that he played for initially when he was a youngster. On to the next defender we're going to look at then, and it's a man called Doran Goyan. Goyan had played for some decent sides, similar to Kribari, who had played it in Italy. He had played for Steaua Bucharest, played a lot of games there, and Palermo. Decent enough pedigree. Again, another player that had a lot of international appearances, so had played a lot for Romania. Tell me your thoughts on Goyan. How did he measure up in the Rangers shirt?
So again, to the season before, in particular the first half of the season, I thought every time Goyan and Bocanegra played together, they complemented each other so much. When we talk about Bocanegra being that intelligent, classy, composed centre-half, I don't know if I'm maybe giving Goyan a bit of a disservice here, but he was more your traditional rough and ready, body in the line centre-half, and I actually thought out of the two, if we could have kept one, he might have been the more suited player, because it was going to be a very physical league we were playing in. I was a big fan of Doran Goyan. I think injury kept him in and out of the team for the 2-3 years he was there. I don't know if you remember, there was it was either Facebook or Twitter, and the page was Doran Goyan Facts, and it was basically just like, see, it's similar to the Chuck Norris facts that you used to get. It was just basically that, like, at the weekend, Peterhead had 7 crosses into the box. Doran Goyan headed away 10 of them. You know, that kind of stuff. But I was a fan of Goyan, but no surprise that he went on to he went out on loan as well. I wasn't going back to what I was saying at the start. I thought we would have been extremely lucky to keep either Bocanegra or Goyan. I would have loved one of them, but ended up we got neither.
Yeah, it was a no-nonsense, I think was the phrase to use, and it was just a no-nonsense defender. Attacked everything. But yeah, that was kind of my memories of him as well, just being a rock at the back. And you're right, see if we could have held on to him just to guide a few of these players, these younger players. I know it's probably idyllic or wishful thinking and sentimental to be thinking that, but I've seen that as well. That's the way I've seen approaching this journey back, was going to be, let's get a young team together, and a young team should be able to win that third division no problem. So just a splattering of experience was all we were going to need, but yeah, not to be. Goyan moved on, so as you say, he moved off in loan. First of all, he went to Spezia. A bit of a issue at Spezia, and that was because he pushed a referee. I don't know if you remember the Canio doing that. I think that's for Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously a similar type incident where he's pushed the referee and he's got a bit of a suspension, 4-game ban. The manager at the time was just saying, get rid of him, sent him back to Rangers, but he scored. Once he came back for his suspension, he scored, and always forgiven. You know what the Italians are like, they're just, always forgiven, carry on. So he became a mainstay in the team actually after that. Finished up the season there. After that, then moved on to Tripoli, Asteris Tripoli. That's where he moved on and ultimately finished his career. A great player. Another player who racked up a hell of a lot of appearances over his career. I know you said there was a few injuries at Rangers, but certainly made a lot of appearances international and club. One of the defenders that we could have maybe brought on, one of the things we're saying there is how could we have brought on the youth, and that would have been a mixture of experience and youth. One of the youth players that was promising coming through the ranks was Ross Perry. Ross Perry, to me, this was one of the ones that I thought was going to be a great player. I thought he could have really developed himself coming through the divisions. He came right through the Rangers youth, so he didn't have a career prior to that. So any Any thoughts on Ross Perry?
Just want to say, I find the way you've listed these players out, it kind of matches my mood for that season. You know, we've started really high and really positive, and we've got slowly but surely just kind of break me down, and that was my emotions for this season. This was exactly what we were talking about. This is the kind of guy that he'd been in and about the Rangers first team the last couple of years, even under Walter Smith, making appearances from the bench. I think he made his debut alongside Davy Weir in a cup game, maybe, when Walter Smith was in charge, and he was always thereabouts, couple of loan spells. So, well, you're thinking, right, this is a chance to proper bring on somebody who'll be there for years and develop them at the right speed. And my memories of him has just been an absolute bomb scare. And I don't know if I'm being maybe unfair, because the biggest memory I have of him is the Dundee United game in the Scottish Cup. But I think that just kind of summed up that was like his highlights of the season, all in one. All the mistakes he made, that was what we were seeing every week. I mean, for the first goal, don't know if you remember, it was a long ball in, and Kribari actually goes to clear the ball, but he kind of miskicked it, and he sliced it slightly, but Ross Perry's just kept on running into the back of him, so the striker goes through, scores. But if I actually looking back over my memories for this, I watched the highlights of that Dundee United game, and I don't know why I put myself through that. It was terrible. But even away from the goals, there's times where Ross Perry's in the box and the ball's getting crossed in and he's running the wrong way. It's weird. I don't know if you'll get this reference, like you're a proper adult, but see Mario Kart, you know what that is? It's like, aye. It was like if you're playing Mario Kart and you're looking at the wrong side of the screen, you think you're the other person, you're trying to direct it. But in actual fact, your car's just going round in circles. That's what it looked like with Ross Perry that game. He didn't know where he was going, and I think he claimed he was injured and he got subbed off maybe early on in the second half. But I think he shot himself, and that was my long-lasting memory of Ross Perry.
A bit of a headless chicken then.
Bit of headless chicken, mate. Aye.
Yeah, it's sad to see it, innit? Because when you've got these high hopes for these young players that are coming through, and you've got visions of them being outstanding stalwarts for the club, and they're going to go on and do so much for us, and it just never materialises. His career didn't actually take off at all after leaving Rangers like it does for some. Went to Raith Rovers, didn't feature much. Northampton Town, didn't feature much. Brecon, Clyde, Albion, Dumbarton, sort of gradual decline there before signing. He's now playing in the juniors. He's playing for Darvel now in the junior leagues. But I think he had there was ankle ligament damage earlier on in his career, and I don't know if that's just hampered him. But yeah, he's not really shone as he would have hoped, I'd imagine. Going on to another player who I thought was going to be an absolute superstar, Kyle Hutton. Kyle Hutton, another player who came through the ranks, made more appearances than Ross Perry did, but Kyle Hutton to me was going to be a Rangers captain. I absolutely loved Kyle Hutton. So if anyone's listening to the Gallant Few looking for scouting tips or looking for expertise, football analysis, please don't listen to me, listen to the other guys. That's where the expertise it comes from. It's certainly not me. I honestly loved Kyle Hutton. I thought he was going to dominate midfields for years. What do you think, Colin? Was on the right track, early doors of initial impressions?
I just heard the angry smashing of keyboards from follow listeners when you mentioned Kyle Hutton being a Rangers captain. I don't think he's follow's favourite player for this time, but I'll put my head in the plate there. I actually thought the same. I was delighted when we managed to keep him. another one who was breaking through under Walter Smith, and he played against Manchester United in the Champions League. We got beat 1-0 at Ibrox that game, but I was there and he didn't look out of place. This seems to be a player who just played the level around him, so he could play the Champions League level, but he looked every part of a third division player when he went down there. There's actually two kind of everlasting memories of Kyle Hutton for me. It's the shittest claim to fame ever, but I went to school with his wife. So I'd met him a couple of times before he broke through to Rangers, and we were at a house party once, and he told me a story that his wages got mixed up with Alan Hutton's once, and he got Alan Hutton's monthly wage in his bank account, and he got to keep it. And I was telling everybody in school on the Monday, and it was about 6 years later I was thinking about it, and I was like, he was taking the absolute piss out of me, wasn't he? But we were talking about the heights of playing against Paul Scholes at Ibrox. That 2-1 loss to Annan at Ibrox, I remember he played there, and he was in and out of the team at that point. I remember McCoy got a lot of stick for not playing him, and then when he eventually did play him, he was getting a lot of stick for keeping him in the team because he shouldn't win. But Kyle Hutton was particularly poor at Annan, against Annan that day. I've never seen so many stray passes, like 5-10 yard passes, and I think at that point, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it is just he plays to the level around him, or he wasn't interested at this point. But early on, I thought he was going to be a big player for Rangers.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad I'm not totally lost it. I mean, I'd still take him back today. No, I wouldn't. But I really did. I thought he was going to be a great player. Didn't materialise. So looking after his Rangers career, left in 2015, went to Queen of the South. I think he'd done alright at Queen of the South, but as you say, he's playing at the level round about him. I think he was just one of the better players in the Queen of the South team. Then he went to St Mirren, Airdrie, Dumbarton, that's where he had the most appearances in club career. Was in Dumbarton. He actually won the Player of the Year for them, thus justifying my high hopes for him, realising his potential. And then he's moved on to East Kilbride now. I don't really have any stats for that. I couldn't actually find out if he's actually played any games for them or not. And do you know what? Was Ian Durrant still at East Kilbride? They've kind of dropped off my radar. They were on my radar last year for some reason, but I don't know if they've totally stopped playing or if it's or what's happening there. Do you know?
I have no idea, but I'm sure the last couple of years a lot of money has been going into the East Kilbride team, so it wouldn't surprise me if the likes of Ian Durrant and that was still there. But I think guys like Kyle Hutton and I don't know, there's another couple of players that have kind of dropped for the Scottish Championship, SPFL, to the likes of East Kilbride and Darvel, because there's a lot of money going into it. I don't know what's happening with like Lowland League and junior football, if it's like a front for like a mafia business, but there's a lot of money kicking about there. Yeah,
Celtic. Well, I'm not going to claim mafia because that's nonsense. I'm not. I could get sued or I could get shot, one of the two. But no, there's a lot of Celtic Hearts, so a lot of money behind them at the moment. East Kilbride, you're right. There's money being thrown at them, and if it wasn't for the curtailment of the last season, there would have been teams coming up, most likely Celtic, although I think they had to play Brora Rangers maybe. So there was going to be a Highland League versus the Lowland League playoff, but it eventually didn't happen. But yeah, interesting to see how he turns up at East Kilbride. Yeah, moving on to another young player who coming through the ranks. Another one who we had high hopes for. I certainly did, and that was Lewis McLeod coming through the youth ranks at Rangers. What have you got to say about Lewis McLeod?
So he's one of the very few players of this part of the journey that I don't have really anything negative to say about him, other than kind of how it ended up for him. I thought he was excellent for his short time at Rangers. I think he only got just over like 50 appearances, but I remember him breaking through, and it was kind of similar to when Jamie Ness was breaking through a couple of years before. There was a good bit of excitement about him, and he was just so neat and tidy and composed on the ball. He was such a neat passer, and he had a great eye for goal. I know it's no this season in particular, but then 2 great Rangers goals, an overhead kick against Ayr United, and the season after that, an overhead kick against Livingston. And he was another one that's... I know we were saying Ross Perry was a guy that at first we thought, okay, this is somebody who's going to be at Rangers for years to come. But when Lewis McLeod played, he backed up that premonition. He looked as if he could be playing in the top flight for Rangers the way he was playing. And I get we need to take into consideration the opposition we were playing and the players around him, but he stood out so much. And I remember it was my birthday. I think my 21st, 22nd birthday. He pulled his hamstring in that 3-2 defeat to Alloa, his last game for Rangers. What a shite present that was.
I thought you were going to say he turned up at your house party for a 21st and told you that he got wages or something, right? Yeah, he was a player that you thought was going to be... Because he was doing it at the international level as well in the unders. You know, I think he was playing well in the under 18s and under 21s, I think. But there was definitely a big buzz about Lewis McLeod. Yeah, he did. You know, he's still got a good career that's continued. But yeah, he was one of the players I definitely did think would have a future at Rangers if he had stayed.
He actually got called up to the Scotland squad. He didn't play, but you remember when Scotland played England, and it would have been the Euro 2016 qualifiers. So I think this game was in 2014. He got called up and he was on the bench in Stratton's team. So Rangers were League One or Championship at that point. And that's how good he was. It's just such a pity how it turned out, because I think if his body held up, I don't know, it's maybe similar to what people were saying about Jordan Rossiter at Liverpool. If his body held up, he could have went very, very far in the game, I think.
Yeah, so after Rangers, Lewis then moved on to Brentford. That may have been a tip-off from Warburton, maybe. Possibly. Then Wigan. And now he's at Plymouth. He's not really been featuring a lot, but I think the injuries are plaguing him as well. I think he's another one that the injuries are just taking their toll, because his career could have really kicked on. I think I remember at Brentford that he got a really good start, or he had a really good... he was getting a good write-up anyway. He was scoring a lot of goals. Because I remember at the time going, God, we really miss him. You know, we're missing him now. That's the type of player we could be doing with. But yeah, that was it. He's currently plying his trade at Plymouth Argyle. Well, let's look at another one of the youngsters then. The next two players we're going to look at are another couple of youngsters that broke through. So, first one we'll look at is Robbie Crawford. Robbie Crawford, again, coming through the youth team. What's your memories of Robbie Crawford?
I'm actually shocked the amount he played for Rangers. He's played 40 odd games, and I remember him being out on loan for most of his time at Rangers. So surprised to go that many appearances. Were
a lot of them substitute appearances though? I seem to remember him coming on a lot as a sub.
I think so, and I remember every time he came on, you can't fault the boy's attitude. He was like an honest trier, he really was, and like I think he was one of these players that run all day for you and put 110% in. But I think you've seen early on he wasn't up to the standard that we needed, even compared to the rest of the young boys, because we've got the likes of Lewis McLeod we're talking about, Kyle Hutton, who we'd already seen, Barry Mackay we'll talk about in another episode, I'm sure. But these guys were all starting to look out and stand out, and he wanted to be everywhere and anywhere. He was like a Labrador chasing after the ball instead of a footballer, wasn't he?
Yeah, I just remember him being slight. He was such a slight player, and by that age you were thinking, well, you need to put a bit of beef on, you're going to need to start bulking up, because you're getting pushed off the ball all the time. As you say, he would run all day. He's a great dribbler. He would sprint, he would chase things down, but if anyone came near him, they just used to shoulder him out the way. He used to frustrate the life out of me. just didn't have the strength to be a professional in the man's game. But after leaving Rangers, a couple of loan appearances, Greenock Morton, Alloa. He also went to East Kilbride. Actually, he was one of the players that did drop down into the lower league. So you can see his actual career declining. The level that he played that declined. But he then did move on to a team called FH. I don't even know their full name, to be honest. I've not looked up the real name, but it's an Icelandic team. One of the better Icelandic teams. I think they won the Premier League recently. They won the top division recently. And then he moved on to another Icelandic team, played a season there, and then just last season there he's moved on to Charleston Battery, which is a team that play in... Where do they play? I forget the name of it. South Carolina, I think it is. It's in America, but I'm sure it's South Carolina is the name of the state that they play in. Charleston Battery are actually in the lower league, so kind of our championship for the team below the MLS. I think it speaks a lot for a player who does something like that. There's been a few players recently who have moved to Iceland. Rings a bell. There's a couple of players went there. Players who actually go out and take their talent and take it elsewhere. Such an exciting life to lead, I think, for an average footballer to be able to do that and go and travel the world just playing football. I remember he plays in America, but I always imagined that if I had moved to America like at the age of 12 or something, I'm sure I would have been seen in the street doing like 5 keepy-ups and they'd have thought I was Pele, and I'd get signed up and I'd be playing for the US national team by the age of 14 or something.
So Carlos Bocanegra was shite then, that's what you're saying, just because he was American.
Good point. Yeah, okay, next one we're going to look at then is Andy Mitchell. And this one, guy didn't really make many appearances for Rangers, but he was on my radar. I remember him playing in, again, another one who I could have done well, but he also was another one of these slight players. He looked to me to be quite small and easily pushed off the ball. Would you remember any games standing out or anything that sticks out about Andy Mitchell?
No, the only question I had was I can't remember at the time thinking, I don't know for the life of me why Alan McCoy doesn't rate him. Like it might have been because he was slight, but I remember every time he came on, and he was a midfielder, but he played right back a couple of times, and he looked impressive. He looked like a decent prospect coming through. Somebody who, if he had the right run of games at the right pace, then he could have really made a mark. I do vaguely remember a bit of newspaper talk when he first signed. I think he came from the Man City Academy, and he was kind of highly thought of. So I remember thinking this, like at that time, before 2012, that he was highly thought of, and I thought this was somebody who was going to make an impact the more games he got. But at the end of this season, he got loaned back out to Annan, and I thought that was just a terrible decision. Even if you wanted to give him more game time, he should have been playing higher than the Division 3, I thought, and that's just in the kind of vague memories I have of him playing. But I do remember being quite impressed with him every time I seen him.
Yeah, I was impressed. I thought he was a decent enough player, but just didn't get the opportunities for whatever reason. McCoy seemed to have his favourites, and he wasn't one of them. As you said, they moved on to Annan, but they made that move permanent. They actually moved there on a full-time basis before going to Southport in England. Then he moved back to Northern Ireland. He was a Northern Irish player, so he moved back to Crusaders, where he won the Premiership with Crusaders, and then he moved on a couple of years later to Linfield, again winning the Premiership there again with Linfield, and also the League Cup. And now, just last season, he signed for Larne FC in Northern Ireland as well.
I think Larne FC are the East Kilbride or Darvel of Northern Ireland right now. I think they're quite a small club with some money getting put behind them right now. For what I've read, I'm not an expert in Northern Irish football, but I don't know. Andy Mitchell might be the marquee signing. You don't know.
Could be. Well, let's move on then. We'll not look at one of the youngsters now. We'll have a look at one of the experienced players that we signed, and that's a striker called Kevin Kyle. Well, Kevin Kyle had a bit of a career before he came to Rangers. Racked up quite a few appearances down south, starting off his career at Sunderland, where he probably made his name at Sunderland. I think he played with Kevin Phillips. I don't know if the timing of that works out, but he's certainly a big lad up front. He was a target man for Sunderland. That's where he came to prominence for me. And then he made a few loan deals. Went to Coventry. I think he made a bit of an impression there as well. Then he was playing at Kilmarnock, so he moved up to Scotland, or back up to Scotland. He's initially from Stranraer, so he moved to Kilmarnock. Few games at Hearts before signing for Rangers, making 8 appearances for Rangers. What did you make of Kevin Kyle?
See in the middle of the show when I said this list kind of epitomises my emotion going downhill at this season. This just really sums up the absolute depths of despair for this campaign. He was a terrible signing. And I'm not just saying that in hindsight. I wasn't happy when we signed him in the first place because he was an aging striker who'd done fairly well in England 10 years before. But Kilmarnock, he was a bit of a hammer thrower. Hearts, he didn't do much. And we didn't sign him straight for Hearts. He had 2 or 3 failed trials for Ayr United or I don't know, some championship clubs, and we were his 3rd trial, I'm sure. And then we took him, and I remember the first time seeing him at Ibrox, and he looked as if he looked as if they should be fucking selling the pies. He was so overweight and so lethargic, and I don't want to end the show in too low, no, but this infuriates me every time I think about this signing. And Andy the Bargain's an absolute roaster. I don't know if you watch Open Goal, but a couple of months ago he was harping on about how Rangers should sell Kent for 4 or 5 million and go and sign Martin Boyle. He's a fucking idiot.
I was going to ask you about his the podcast. I'm not a fan of that podcast. When it first came out, I was a fan. I enjoyed it. I liked the interviews that you had with ex-Rangers and ex-Celtic players. I thought it was quite a nice insight you got into it, but it just became boring with the boy Simon Ferry. He just asked the same questions over and over and over again. It just became so boring. And now I've seen a few recent episodes with Kevin Kyle, and there's an ex-Celtic player who I don't get. There's a bit of a fuss about this boy, and I just don't get why there's a fuss about him. He just seems a bit of a, let's not slag on a podcast because it's not an easy thing to do, but it just infuriates me. I can't watch it anymore. But yeah, any other things about Kevin Kyle when he was playing with Rangers? I guess there's not, because he didn't feature much for us. He's probably one of the types of players where we thought he could come in and do a job, but well, you said you didn't think he would. It was indicative of the signing policy of McCoist that season, where he was just trying to bring in all of these experienced players. And I remember thinking, and I'm sure the people around about me at Ibrox were all thinking the same. It's why do we need to bring experience in? We don't need experience for this challenge that we're facing. We can do it with the youngsters, provided they're coached correctly. And all right, have a few in there, but you don't need to be packing your squad with experience. No, I'm in agreement with you, Colin. He wasn't a player that stood out for me, and I was quite glad to see the back of him.
We actually, never mind how poor he was on the park, I think how much money Rangers wasted. So I don't know if he was maybe just trying to sell a story when he said that Rangers paid him 10 grand a week at that stage, I think he might be a wee bit playful with the truth, but that ballpark figure wouldn't surprise me, like if it was, no far off that. But we terminated his contract in March as well. Think how much money we wasted for so little back.
If he was on that amount of money, he didn't spend it well, or he didn't save it, he didn't put it in the bank, because he ended up working on the ferries. Don't know if you remember that. That's when he left. He left us and went to Air United. I don't think he done much there, and then he ended up back in the ferries. I mentioned he's from Stranraer, so I imagine the ports are just quite a natural employer in that area. So yeah, I also seen that he played a bit of darts as well, and he reached the last 256 of the Scottish Open. That's like, is that meant to be a notable achievement? How many people play at darts?
He looked every fucking inch of darts player when he played at Rangers.
It's true. Right, let's move on to the last player. Sorry, we've got two players to go. Second last player is another experienced player before he came to Rangers, and that was Francesco Sandazza. Played a bit all over the place in Spain, a few places here and there. Actually came to the UK and played for Dundee United first, before moving to Brighton, St Johnstone, before moving on to Rangers. Sandazza, what have you got to say, Colin?
So, again, I'm going to open myself up for a bit of criticism here. At the time we signed him, I thought it was a very good signing, because different for Kyle, who was a bit of a hammer thrower at that point. Sandazza looked fairly decent for St Johnstone. I don't know if St Johnstone won they like, I know they weren't a very technical team, but he looked as if for them he had a bit more finesse about him. He was a decent finisher, so I thought I could see this signing. He wasn't too old. He was still mid to late 20s. So we should have got a few seasons. So I thought that was a really decent signing, and I was wrong. I mean, I think he scored in his first game at Ibrox, and he had a couple of assists. But other than that, I don't remember him doing very much at all. Saying he's got 3 goals there, I only remember that one. I think, don't know if you're going to come on to talk about it. The biggest thing about Sandazza that I remember is the manner in which he left. And I think that just really sums up the pandemonium that was going on at the club at that point.
Yeah, so for the listeners then, what we're referring to is, if you can cast your mind back, the way that Sandazza left Rangers was through a bit of a hoax. There was a football agent, or someone pretending to be a football agent, who had called him up and saying, "Would you be interested in leaving Rangers?" And he said, "Well, yeah, if the money's right, I'd be happy to leave. I'd be happy to go." And this became public knowledge. It was just a hoax, complete hoax, and he was caught out. When Rangers found out about it, they obviously were not too chuffed about it, and they suspended him. And actually, that resulted in them actually being, after the suspension, we went through it and we actually just terminated his contract. But yeah, silly boy. I mean, what was he thinking?
He must be an idiot to get outwitted by Declan from Coatbridge. Fucking, it was a Tim or something, wasn't it? Trying to sell the story to the record. Him and Kevin Kyle, a couple of idiots up front, must have suited each other.
Yeah, so Sandazza left and went. He's been travelling the world. He's another one that's obviously just picking up a wage. He's a journeyman. It's a definition of a journeyman. He's just went all over the place. He's went to Lugo, Girona, Tokyo. His most recent club is in India. So he's playing in the Indian Premier League now. Just signed there last season. So yeah, obviously a man that just follows the cash.
Are you going to take a stab at pronouncing his last 3 clubs, Graeme?
Thanks for that. Did you see that? I just bypassed that. Yeah, okay, let's have a look then. So he's then played for, I'm guessing this in Saudi Arabia on loan, Al Ahly. Then he's moved to Kundago Hungai which I'm assuming's Chinese, and then Alcorcon. Alcorcon, that's my Spanish coming out there.
That was very good.
Thanks. Thanks for putting me on the spot there. I was trying to bypass them and just go to the ones that I could pronounce.
Anytime.
Okay, let's look at the last player that we've got then. Last player is Kane Hemmings. Another player coming through the ranks at Rangers. Only featured 9 times for Rangers in the 3 years that he was here. Kane Hemmings, to me, was going to be a good player as well, had high hopes. I think I've said that about all the young players we've mentioned in this pod, that I had high hopes for all these players, and I think I'm just an optimist. I always want to see the guys coming through the youth team and doing well, and whenever they do anything promising, I just start building them up in my own head, thinking, yeah, this guy is going to be a superstar. I think I should learn my lesson by now, but Kane Hemmings, what did you... Bit of a pace merchant is my memory of him. Is that your memory?
So I'm glad you mentioned about your high hopes about Kane Hemmings. I don't have very much recollection of him other than him being there, and I remember at the time it was a very Rangers fan thing at that point in time to say, "Oh, Hemmings should be in the team," but I could never understand why. I could never understand why.
Was he not just scoring so many in the reserves?
Was that what it was?
I think he was scoring hat-tricks in the reserve. That's my memory of it. But you're right, there was a buzz about him. There was a bit of, get this guy in the team. But I think it was just due to his youth career, or else the reserves that he was playing in, and he was banging them in. But I remember him being quite fast. I remember him having pace, and that's what... that might be a false memory, but that's what I remember him.
I always tend to go on if they impress me when they make a sub appearance. Then, like we were talking about Andy Mitchell there, who always looked kind of impressed when he came on or when he featured. And that's how I tend when I jump in the bandwagon with youth players quite often as well. But it tends to be the John Fleck's first couple of appearances had a bit of dig about him. That's the kind of stuff I look for. I'll never really buy too much into doing it in the reserves. Even if you look at it, maybe 2 years ago, Ryan Hardy, there was a big buzz about Ryan Hardy because he was doing it in the reserves, but I went on the sub appearances he had for Rangers, and I don't know, I never really had the same buzz about Ryan Hardy, and the same with Kane Hemmings. Sorry, Kane.
That's the opinion of Colin MacDuff. Kane will be disappointed to hear that. But he did move on. He moved on to Cowdenbeath. He was actually named in the Championship Team of the Year at Cowdenbeath, so done okay there. Moved on to a few different places. He's been to Barnsley, Dundee. At Dundee, he actually had a really good spell there. I remember him. He played, racking up quite a few goals, and he was top of the charts for a while. So he done really well at Dundee. Had a good couple of seasons there. Before he actually went to Dundee, he had a spell at Orlando. So went for a trial in Orlando. It didn't quite work out, and then got back in Dundee. What a come down that is, eh? Didn't really do much at Oxford, and then he went to Notts County, and he was actually relegated at Notts County, so he dropped out the league, and he moved himself back to Dundee, where he had another only last season or 2 seasons ago at Dundee. He had another spell there. Didn't quite set it alight the way he did the first spell at Dundee, and he's now moved on to Burton Albion. So that's the roundup of all the players. Anything in there, any players that you remember from that season that I've missed out, or anyone that's
I think what we said at the start of the show, this is now starting to get far away enough that we can maybe look back and have a little bit of a laugh about it. It still hurts, but we can maybe look at the kind of brighter moments that had happened. It'd be remiss of us to talk about this season without discussing, I don't know if it was this season or a season before actually, but this general time when we were a fucking circus. Kyle Hutton and his pal Cal Naismith getting kidnapped in their own car. Do you remember that?
I don't actually remember it. I remember reading about it recently, but it was in Edinburgh, wasn't it?
In Edinburgh, they both go put in the boot of their own car, I'm sure, and then go stranded in Edinburgh. I think the guys eventually go to jail and they got their car back, but that was just bizarre. The reason I mentioned that, Cal Naismith is another one who, to be honest, I really, really didn't rate at all that season. I think he kind of epitomised that, like, Nando's culture of young players coming through, and he wanted to look the part more than wanted to play the part, and I didn't really rate him too much on the pitch. My memory of me getting really annoyed at him is actually the Dundee United game as well, when he went in for a cowards tackle, and I don't want to spoil who he probably would have got that influence from, a midfielder who no doubt you'll speak about in one of the next couple of shows, but it was an absolute cowards tackle, nowhere near the ball, and I really hate that kind of stuff. I don't mind kind of see when you think about hard tacklers and rough and ready, like Bruno Gattuso putting your body in the line 50-50. Then you've got guys like Cal Naismith that season, just wanted to hurt the other player, no interest in playing the ball, go sent off Dundee United. That was kind of my lasting memory of him, but he went on to have a decent career, and I was really surprised at that.
Yeah, Naismith did go on to have a bit of a career, didn't he? Well, he's still on that, but yeah, didn't really stand out for me though. I did not rate him at all. He was one of the players who, going against the grain, didn't stand out. I didn't have high hopes for. One of the ones that I did seen through, basically. Okay, guys. Colin, thanks very much for coming on the show today. Listeners, please let me know your feedback. Let's hear from you. Is there any memorable moments, or I know you have probably got to block all of this out, or you've maybe tried to block it out. But if there is any players that we've missed out, please let us know. What was your opinion of these players? Did you have high hopes the way we did for the youngsters? Please get in touch through Facebook, through the Twitter page. The Twitter page is at the Gallant Few 1. You can find us there. We're also on Instagram. And this podcast is now available on YouTube, so please get in touch through YouTube. And also on Spotify. We've recently been added to Spotify, so please follow us on there if that's where you like to get your podcast from. Colin, how did you find that podcast? Did you enjoy that, looking back?
It was a lot less painful to talk about these players than it was 8 years ago. So I did enjoy that. Thanks very much for having me on, Graeme.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, listeners. Goodbye.